Hello, I'm Paul Calvano. So far during the previous videos, we've talked about how to access the Chrome User Experience Report data. Then we looked at how the data is structured. We looked at the different table, the table schema and examples of some of the rows of data. And then we looked at ways of querying that to kind of extract some useful information out of it. We looked at the dimensions, the origin, the form factor, and the effective connection type. And we looked at how we can summarize that. And then most recently what we did was we ran queries like the one that you see here to extract data that we were able to use to create histograms like the ones that you see here, which compared Hacker News to Reddit. What I want to do next is I want to take a look at, for a single website, how to represent all four of the metrics that are being collected in the Chrome User Experience Report data on a single histogram. So first, let's quickly review this query that created the histogram data for Reddit and Hacker News. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the origin here just to point to a single domain. So I'm going to say that we're going to do this for www.google.com. So the way that this query is structured is that there is a subquery here that is selecting the origin, the form factor, and then it's calling this JavaScript function called spreadBins, which I'll explain in a moment, on the histogram bin data for the onload metric. That's being used as a subquery, and then we're unnesting that the bin data so that we can unpack the arrays into rows. We're then aggregating for each origin and form factor name each bin, which is 100 milliseconds, and summing the density. And that's what we're able to use in order to get the histogram data. Now, the spreadBins function is a user-defined JavaScript function that that's designed to create 100 millisecond bins, regardless of what the bin size is in the Chrome User Experience Report data. And if you saw in the last video, the Chrome User Experience Report data starts off at 200 millisecond increments, then it increases to 500 millisecond increments, and then 5-second increments, and then 10-second increments. So because the bin scaling is inconsistent, we're using this JavaScript function to make it consistent. So because we're looking at a single website, I'm going to remove the origin from this query. So now we're just going to focus on the form factor name, which we're going to call client, and we can remove origin from here as well. We'll go ahead and run this query. And now what we're looking at is just this performance data for Google.com. So it's running right now. And then what we'll do is we'll, in order to grab some of the other measurement data, what we're going to do is union a couple of queries together. So we've got the onload metric. Let's take a look at first paint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste that query. I'm going to add a union all for the for instead of onload histogram.bin, I'm going to say first underbar paint.histogram bin, and then for the metric label, I'm going to name that first paint. So now we've got two queries that are running here. One is going to give me the first paint data, and the other is going to give me the onload data. So let's go ahead and run this. You'll notice that there's 1,000 rows of data over here, and it, well, you can't see it, but it processed a little over 7 gig of data. So we're gonna run this query, and we should see twice the amount of data processed and twice the amount of rows, or close to twice the amount of rows. I see 1,750 rows of data and 13.5 gig of data processed. So the next thing that we would need to do here is add a couple more metrics. So what we're going to do is we're going to union all the first contentful paint as well as DOM content loaded. So zoom out here so you can see we've got first paint. Now we have got first content full paint, which is going to be first underbar content full paint histogram, and then we've got DOM content loaded, which is going to be DOM underbar content loaded histogram.bin. And at this point we've got all of the data that we need in order to collect everything and start building histograms. So I'm going to copy this and paste it into the query editor. And when we run this, again, it's going to take a couple of seconds. It's probably going to process close to 30 gig of data, but it's going to give us all of the metrics that we're looking for. So there you go. You can see 26 gig of data processed in 14 seconds, and now we've got 3,350 rows of data with everything that we need in order to start creating these histograms. If I save this to a Google Sheet and then open it, we can go and create a pivot table just like we did before. So I'm going to say data pivot table, and then just like we did before, I'll say that the row is the bin, the value is the sum of the volume, and then for the columns we can add client, and because we've added metric as a label, that's going to give us all of the different response time metrics. So in this case, if we were to graph this data here, this would provide all four of the measurements on the same graph. You can see that here if we go ahead and add this chart with the selected data. We need to remove this bin from the series and add it as a label because it occasionally gets added as a series. Excellent. And then when we get down here, we can also change the column chart to something that is a bit more readable for histogram data, and you can see the different measurements here. So now we've labeled everything onto a single graph, and you can see the relationship of first paint to DOM content loaded and on load. Let's say we want to eliminate some of this step where we're working with pivot tables. Another thing that we could do is use a trick that allows us to combine a max and an if SQL function to essentially mimic what we were doing with a histogram. With a pivot table. So let's actually go ahead and take a look at that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this entire query that we ran, and I'm going to use this as a subquery. So what we'll do is add that as a subquery. And in the select clause for the outer query, what we're going to do is I want the client and I want the bin. And then for the metric, what I'm going to do is say I want the max of the max of the volume based on what the metric is defined as. So if the metric is first paint, I want the volume, and I'm going to call it first paint. And if the metric is not first paint, it's going to be 0. But there's going to be another column that's going to contain this this value here. And it'll eventually the max of that will be the value. So we're going to add a couple more of these. So I'm going to add. I've got the switch this out of column mode. Okay. So now what we've got here is so first paint, first content, full paint, DOM content loaded, and onload. So we've got all 4 of these metrics, and we're selecting these from the subquery data. And then because we're creating an aggregate graph, an aggregate query, what we need to do at the bottom of this is group by client and bin, and then we can order by client and bin. And if we run this, we can we'll see what the results look like. So this is doing the same thing that we did before, but the results should be a little bit easier to process because it won't involve working with a pivot table. So you can see over here that now we've got desktop, bin, and all the metrics are laid out here. And if we look at the pivot table that we had created before, it's consistent here, like 0.277, 0.0808, and those numbers are here. So the numbers add up, and now we can go ahead and save this to a Google Sheet and click View, and our data is right here, and then we can simply say, I just want the first 10 seconds of this data, and insert a chart, and then we're done after we do a little bit of formatting. So remove the bin, add it to the x-axis, and change the column chart to an area chart. Data looks the same. It was just a lot easier to work with that since we didn't have to go and do the pivot table step. And if you're looking for the phone, because we've ordered it, it's just below that. So you can do the same thing for phone, and create that graph as well. I hope this was useful, and have fun playing around with the CrUX data. I hope you find some insightful things, and if you do, please share. And looking forward to seeing what everyone comes up with. Thank you very much.